Hey, welcome back, friends, to the Bald Booktuber. My name is Scott. I thought today we would go through my top 10 favorite books I've read thus far into 2022. I saw this video, Grace did it over Grace Dionne. I will have both her channel and the video linked in the description. Do check her out, she's great. Famously, she has a hard time ranking things. I love to rank things, so this is my kind of video, so let's get rolling. All right, these are all books I've read from January to June. In that time, I read about 50 books, so these are my 10 favorites among them. I have tried to avoid repeats of the same series. There, in general, is one author. In general, I've only done one author per, what am I trying to say? I'm trying not to repeat the same author multiple times, but there's one exception here that I'll get into, so. All right, number 10. This is going to be 7 Games, A Human History. I read this in January. It is by Oliver Roeder, and it was narrated by William Saris. I still think about this book frequently. It made me care about games that I really don't care too much about, like checkers and Scrabble. Those chapters are fascinating. It made me care about a game I don't even know the rules to in Go, the ancient Chinese game of Go. It made me appreciate chess in a new way, made me appreciate poker in a new way, which are 2 games I absolutely love. So I think about this frequently, which is not common when it comes to nonfiction, so for me. So I am happy to have this on the list. I would highly recommend it to anybody that loves games. All right, moving on. Question. Number 9. This is going to be Savage Son. This is book 3 in the Terminal List by Jack Carr. I had been away from this series for a little bit, and not for any reason other than I just didn't get around to it. My excitement has been reinvigorated with being able to meet him recently, and the show on, I think it's on Amazon. I don't remember if it was Amazon or Netflix. Either way, it was really good. Ray Porter does the narration. Ray Porter is a genius, one of my top 10 favorite narrators of all time. Absolutely brilliant. Savage Son is... The violence was cranked up to max on this one, so have a heavy stomach going into it, or don't read it. That would be my observation and my explanation for whether you'll be into this series or not. If you love 80s action stuff, then there's a decent chance you will really, really connect with it. If you love Navy SEALs like I do, you'll really connect to it. But it's not going to be for everybody, so really good. Number 9. Number 8. This is going to be The Dragonbone Chair. This is book 1 of the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn series by Tad Williams. It was narrated by Andrew Wincott, who is fantastic. This was, for all intents and purposes, my first foray into Tad Williams. I read bits and pieces of his sci-fi first book in the series, Otherland, many, many years ago, but don't really remember much of anything. Tad is a fantastic writer. This is really kind of one of the bridges between classic fantasy and modern fantasy. It is one of the primary influences on George R.R. Martin in Song of Ice and Fire. I've really enjoyed it. I loved, obviously, this book. I really liked book 2, and I need to get back to the massive undertaking of book 3 to Green Angel Tower at some point this year. All right, number 7 is going to be The Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince. This is my favorite author of all time, Queen Robin Hobb. This is a prequel novella to the entirety of The Realm of the Elderlings. I read this, I think January or February. Loved it from cover to cover. It's very short. I think it's only about 100 pages. I wish there had been more of it. Hobb is one of the few writers where I just want more pages and more words and not less. So I never complain that something is too big or anything like that when it comes to a Robin Hobb book. So Yeah, very good. I would highly recommend it. People ask where they should read it in terms of the reading order of the series. Uh, Kind of my two things I would recommend would be either you can read it between Live Ship and Tawny Man. If you want some insight into the piebalds for the Tawny Man series, that's a possibility. Or you could do like I did, where you use it as kind of a dessert after the main course, and you can visit it after the entirety of the series, which is what I did. All right, book 6 was a release from this year. This is Hunger of the Gods. This was released in April. I read it in May. It's book 2 of the Bloodsworn Saga by Mr. John Gwynne. It was narrated by the fantastic Colin Mace. I love this book even more than book 1, The Shadow of the Gods. I'm excited to see how he wraps this up in the conclusion, because it's going to be a trilogy. I had a great time with this book. I would highly recommend it both to people that are familiar with Gwyn from his Faithful and the Fallen series, or people that haven't read any of his stuff. This would also be a good entry point, this particular series. All right, we're moving on to number 5. And this is one I didn't necessarily plan to get into prior to the start of the year. I'm so happy I did, and it's one of my favorite new authors. A lot of this was Madison talking about how great it is. She's done a video on it and so forth, and I finally gave it a shot, and it's A Man Called Ove. This is, and I say it wrong every single time. Ove, Uve, I don't know what it is. I say it wrong every time. The author is Frederick Bachman. It was narrated by the brilliant J.K. Simmons, the actor. He did a fascinating job with this book. I had a ball with it. I loved every single moment of it. As I mentioned when I was talking about it on my wrap-up, the main character, Ove, reminds me a lot of my maternal grandfather, and just a grumpy curmudgeon of a dude, which I loved. Very, very heartwarming story. Very sad in a lot of parts, but ultimately you find yourself kind of cheering for Ove, or at least I did. I love this book. All right, we're moving on to number 4. This is going to be The Shining by Stephen King, the king himself, which I had never read until this year, amazingly. The narrator was Campbell Scott, who did a fantastic job. I read it immersively, so I read it and I listened to Campbell Scott. This is utterly terrifying. It's by far the best haunted house story, or haunted hotel, as it were, story that I've ever read. I had previously seen the adaptation, which is a movie I really love, and I finally got to this, and it's fantastic. I can't say enough good things about The Shining. I'm surprised it's not higher on the list, but I've read a lot of good books this year, so definitely check it out. If you are a King fan, a horror fan, or just in general want to check out a book that deals with many topics like addiction, abuse, special abilities in people, we'll just leave it at that. Really, really good. Check it out. All right, number 3. This is a series that wasn't even on my radar until this year. I never, really heard of it until this year, and then I was doing some research on historical fiction series that I want to get into, and this was number 2 on that list. This is going to be The Queen of Bedlam. This is book 2 in the Matthew Corbett series, just edging out book 1, Speaks the Nightbird, in that same series. I did on my channel a review of Speaks the Nightbird. I am fascinated by this series. This is, of course, Robert McCammon, one of my very favorite new authors. I could read his stuff forever. So far, I've read 5 of his books, and they've been 5 home runs. So the dude just keeps pumping out amazing stuff. It was narrated by Eduardo Ballerini. He does the entire series, and he is fantastic. I am hoping to get more and more people reading this series. It is a historical fiction mystery series. Lots and lots of Sherlock Holmes echoes and vibes and nods to, which I really appreciate, being a Sherlock Holmes fan. The setting is fantastic, which is kind of colonial pre-America at the end of the 17th and beginning of the 18th century. So Speaks the Nightbird starts in 1699, I think, or 98. And then we move into the early 1700s as the series goes along. Very well researched, very well thought out. There are definitely some things that are hard to read within this series. There is plenty of fanatical racism, I would call it, which unfortunately is expected for that time frame. There is a lot of horror elements that are unfortunately still vivid in my mind. I'll just leave it at that. But this is great. Check this series out. It's a lot of fun. All right, number 2 is Kingdoms of Death by Christopher Arrocchio. This is book 4 of the Sun Eater series. This was one of my most anticipated releases of the year. Now, one of my next most anticipated releases of the year is Ashes of Man, because we're getting a second book within the Sun Eater in 2022 in December. So I'm super, super stoked. The Year of the Sun Eater continues, as he also published Tales of the Sun Eater, Volume 2, which is a series of short stories and novellas. So the dude is a maniac, very prolific, continues to just give us amazing stuff. This is my favorite in the series so far, although, I mean, that's really, you could flip a coin on most days. Demon in White was one of my very favorite books last year overall. And Howling Dark is incredible. I love Empire of Silence, that's book 1. So, like, everything is just perfect. What an amazing series. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's great. It is all narrated by Samuel Roken, who is incredible. What an amazing narrator, and on my top 10 list. And that leaves us with number 1. And number 1, if you've been following the channel at all, you know I'm going through the Dark Tower series this year. And you also probably have heard me mention that my favorite within the Tower series and my favorite book of the year thus far is Wizard and Glass. This is book 4 of the Dark Tower. And when I said earlier, I did repeat one author. This is the author I've repeated, obviously, Stephen King. I felt like it was okay to repeat because the 2 books don't have any crossover or anything to do with each other, so other than the author. The narrator is the wonderful, amazing Frank Muller, who untimely passed, unfortunately, but he was the perfect narrator for the first 4 books of this series. Yeah, just fantastic. So that is my top 10 list. I would love to hear your top 10 favorite books that you've read so far in 2022. Throw those in the comments if you would for me. Give me some new things to look into reading. I'm excited about that. But other than that, I hope you've enjoyed it. And as always, publication order always, my friends.